Thinking biblically is not attaching a verse to something and then calling it a day. It's a whole worldview of how does this piece of information reaffirm reality, and how does it interact with every other piece of reality to where it all fits together in a cohesive way.
How do we rise up? How do we just prepare our kids? I mean, I feel like there's so much coming at us at a pace that's faster than what we can handle. Like, I feel like I'm always being hit in the face with a fire hose.
Yeah.
And as mama bears, we want to fight, but we want to protect at the same time. Mm-hmm. How do we do both of those things in a very realistic way?
Yeah, I'd say that if you obviously not literally, you put fight and protect together and you're going to get the word prepare. Mm. That's what we need to be doing, is preparing them. Mm-hmm. And as we were writing the second Mama Bear book, The Guide to Sexuality, Amy came across this interesting thing called the Power to Decide campaign. And they actually looked at the decisions that teens made when they had a parent, and I can't remember if it was specifically a mom or if it was just a parent in general, who exposed them to things that weren't necessarily always the greatest, but like talked with them through it, versus parents that just completely protected them from all of that and sheltered them. And the ones who had parents that talked them through these things actually just statistically made better decisions. And so in the future. And so this is one of those things where I think we need to get rid of the idea that we can shelter kids, because it's just everywhere. Right. As long as your kid is around other kids, and not even homeschoolers are safe. I know a father who he homeschooled his child, and she came out as transgender just because she found the community on Reddit. And he thought that he had her as sheltered as possible. So, I mean, this stuff is just out there. Mm-hmm. So it really is, I just want to encourage moms that they don't have to know everything to begin with. Just start learning about one thing. And one of the things I found the Lord be so faithful with so many moms that I've talked to, is when they start learning about one thing, all of a sudden the Lord brings all these things into their path where it's these opportunities to talk about it. So I kind of always jokingly call it that the Lord gives, for all you science majors out there, he gives you the lecture portion and the lab portion. For the science majors, it's like the lecture portion was, what you go and sit in the classroom, for chemistry. And then the lab portion is like, okay, now let's see if these chemicals actually do what we just taught you that they did. Yeah. And so the lab portion of the learning is where the Lord just gives you these opportunities. And I've seen him be so faithful with so many people that the second they start learning something, he gives them the opportunity to put it into action. And so he's in charge of that. Don't feel like you have to know everything. But then secondly, it really just knowing how to think through things and how to ask the right questions. In fact, this is something I grew up with my dad saying. He said a couple different things. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know how to ask the right questions. And you don't have to have all the answers, but you need to know where to find the answers. So just being aware of the resources that are out there, asking the right questions and knowing where those resources are right there. I mean, and if you think we do not live in a better time than now of having so many resources at our fingertips. And so, I would just say prepare. And most of that is just going to be talking through what you already see in the world. And then maybe going through that RORM thing where you say, what is the intention behind this? Because just remember, no matter how bad something sounds, there can be a really good intention behind that we can affirm. Usually it's someone who's just reacting in a completely opposite direction, but there's still some unspoken need, or there's some hurt that they're trying to address. There's some trauma they're trying to address, or some injustice that they're trying to address. Affirm that. Find it. Look for it. You're going to train your kids to really be able to empathize with people. But then talk about the lies that have snuck in. What are some of the assumptions that this has? What are they assuming is the solution? Is that the solution according to the Bible? So just really having these good conversations. You don't have to know all the facts. You just need to know how to think biblically. Yeah, and I think that's already what so many of your mama bears are doing with the homeschooling, is learning how to think biblically. Thinking biblically is not attaching a verse to something and then calling it a day. It's a whole worldview of how does this piece of information reaffirm reality, and how does it interact with every other piece of reality to where it all fits together in a cohesive way. And having a cohesive biblical worldview the pieces fall together. And there's so much peace when your world makes sense. Even if there's horrible things that are going on, you're like, I have an explanation for those horrible things that are going on. They still make sense according to my worldview.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, Jesus is the example of everything you just said. Like when he came, he did not take the people that followed him and go and make their own colony and leave everybody out and say, don't engage with those people. I'm going to protect you from all that. That's not what he did. He taught and he trained them through his truth and his word on how to be in the world, but not of the world, you know? And that's what we're teaching our kids. We're not teaching them so that they can go off as much as I want to live in the mountains in the middle of nowhere and never engage again. That isn't what God has for us, right? He has our kids a purpose and a plan so that they can not just survive out there, but thrive in him and make an impact. And so I think that we do a disservice to our kids if we think that we're just going to shelter them from what's going on, because we're not.
Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.